everyone, Novels Wonderland here. Thank you all for the love and support you've shown me and the channel.
Ainz is a native but a master at logging in. Chapter 103 to 106. The battle between Albedo and Shaltir entered a white-hot state right from the start. Every collision between the poleaxe and the spit-lance was a contest of strength and rivalry. Several gruesome scratches had already appeared on Albedo's heavy armor. Meanwhile, several marks from the poleaxe's hacking were left on Shaltir's Valkyrie armor. While not serious injuries, they made her appear somewhat disheveled. Lamprey, stop getting cocky with me. Albedo used the recoil force to put some distance between them, shouting loudly, her voice tinged with a hint of urgency. Responding to her, however, was an even fiercer attack from Shaltir. Shut up, you big-mouthed ape. Scarlet magic surged around her, and the spit lance transformed into a blood-red bolt of lightning, thrusting straight at Albedo's heart. Albedo's eyes narrowed, knowing that words were useless. She decided to use Hell Abyss to first destroy Shaltir's Valkyrie armor and the spit lance. For Nazarick, for the Supreme One. Shaltir, I will make you pay the price. The poleaxe switched to the staff-style Hell Abyss, and Shaltir, knowing that this world-class item had a special attack effect against equipment, did not wait for Albedo to attack. Shaltir abandoned melee combat, using her summoned familiars to block Albedo's attacks while she attacked from a distance. Meanwhile, although the beast assault on the flanks had significant initial results, the number of the undead army was simply too vast. The beasts under Aura's command began to feel immense pressure, after experiencing their initial glory. After all, among the many undead, not all were low-level. Occasionally, there were high-level undead with levels above 50, and individual commander-class undead higher than LV-70. The nimble figure of the Fenrir, the god-hunting wolf, wove through the undead crowd. Every pounce could crush the skull of a mid-level undead, but its body had also accumulated several wounds, caused by being struck by negative energy rays released simultaneously by the liches. Although its Amnikai could kill a large number of undead, it also became overwhelmed under the high-intensity battle. The Rainbow Tyrant let out a deafening roar, its eyes scarlet. It had completely entered a berserk state, unable to distinguish friend from foe except for its tamer, Aura. This giant beast, appearing like a red-skinned Tyrannosaurus rex, was quickly restrained by several high-level undead without its tamer's guidance, causing quite a few casualties to its allies. A shrill, mournful cry rang out. To protect Aura, the Stone King Wyvern forcibly took an attack from the Lich King, and its massive body fell. Landing on the ground, its life force quickly dissipated. Before Aura could fall into grief, the fallen Stone King Wyvern stood up again, its eyes covered by blue soul flames. It had already turned into an undead. Bastard, how dare you desecrate my friend? Watching the Lich King retreat immediately after failing the strike, Aura felt extreme anger and sadness, but she had no time to vent these negative emotions. Everyone, you must hold on. Mare, use little catastrophe to clear an area. She brandished her steel whip, constantly lashing at the air, and the orders she issued caused the beast's potential to be sparked once again, with their attributes briefly boosted beyond their original base. 100 meters away, Mare looked at his sister's anxious eyes, and watched the beasts fall one by one, gritting his teeth. Sister. I understand. He raised both hands high, chanting a complex and lengthy incantation. Just as he was focused on casting the spell, a dainty figure appeared like a ghost not far behind him. Dodgy extended a slender finger and tapped lightly towards Mare. Idle charm. Mare stiffened, feeling his magical energy circulation suddenly become sluggish, and the scene before him began to show illusions. He saw countless vines turn into coiling venomous snakes, and the uprooted ancient trees turn into demons with bared fangs and brandished claws. He lost his composure, and the casting of little catastrophe was interrupted halfway. Distraction is not good, you know. Like a cat playing with its prey, Dodgy's figure flickered around Mare, occasionally releasing illusions to disturb his mind, leaving Mare exhausted and unable to concentrate enough to cast spells again. Having lost the support of Mare's nature magic, the pressure on Aura's beasts increased sharply, and the rate of casualties accelerated suddenly. In just a quarter of an hour, the beast army, which had originally been full of momentum, had already lost more than half, and mournful cries rose one after another. Ooal watched as those companions who had followed her for many years fell one by one. She gripped her steel whip tightly, her eyes bloodshot. Ordinary beasts were fine, but for pay-to-win beasts like Fenrir and its Samnachai Yggdrasil, losing even one made her heart ache like it was being stabbed. If they died, they were truly dead. She could only hope that Lord Ainz' resurrection magic would be effective later, and whether it was worth using precious resurrection items. On the main battlefield, Cocytus and Sebastian were like two red-hot blades, continuing to push forward through the iron torrent of the undead. Cocytus's layer of ice kept spreading, freezing swaths of undead. Every swing of the god-slaying blade carried a biting cold wind and the aura of death, slicing those in his way, along with their frozen bodies, into dust. His movements became increasingly sharp, his forearms working in seamless coordination, while the light of various pieces of equipment shimmered on his body. The majesty of Nazarick cannot be violated. He roared again, his voice echoing across the battlefield, inspiring the remaining Nazarick servants. Sebastian still maintained his elegant pace. He could always strike the undead's most vulnerable core command nodes at the most appropriate moment and in the most effortless way. Whether it was high-level liches or high-level death knights, none could escape the fate of being sent to the afterlife by the dragonoid butler's iron fists. Sebastian even had the leisure to observe the surrounding battle situation, his brow furrowing slightly. He had clearly noticed the predicament of the beast legions on the flanks. However, before he could finish off the enemies in front of him and support the two, Aura and Mare, a golden light tore through the undead formation ahead. The enemy's top-tier combat power had appeared. In front of the two level 100 NPCs, Artoria, holding the sword in the stone, and wearing blue armor, blocked the path of Cocytus and Sebastian all by herself. Who goes there? Cocytus stopped his attack, pointing his four weapons towards the golden figure ahead, his voice cold and filled with a warrior's vigilance. Artoria's gaze swept over Cocytus and Sebastian. There was no contempt in her eyes, on the contrary, she was still very serious regarding the two opponents who were far weaker than her. I am Artoria Pendragon, Guardian of Britain, the one who will end Nazarick. Her voice was clear, but to the two level 100 NPCs, it was a complete provocation, no less than using an ultimate skill right in their faces. Sebastian narrowed his eyes slightly. He could feel the sense of justice in this woman before him, a temperament completely different from most members of Nazarick. However, although his justice value was also positive, his stance was always with Nazarick. The one who will end Nazarick, is it quite a bold statement? Sebastian bowed slightly, his tone trying to maintain the elegance of a butler, but his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's and his fists clenched tight. My name is Sebastian, the butler of the great tomb of Nazarick, and this is Lord Cocytus, one of the floor guardians of Nazarick. Although your strength is admirable, if you wish to pass through here, please ask the weapons in our hands first. Cocytus crossed his forearms, the god-slaying blade and the other three weapons humming. His insect face showed no expression, but his voice was filled with fighting spirit. Powerful warrior, your declaration is your challenge. I, Cocytus, accept your challenge. Artoria nodded slightly, gripping the sword in the stone in her hand. She could feel that although these two opponents before her were not as strong as her, their combat techniques far exceeded those of ordinary people. At the very least, since arriving in this world, she had never seen anyone with better combat techniques than these two. Usually, when practicing with Leonardo, it was always gentle, and after a few battles, she never felt satisfied. The two enemies before her were different. After lowering her strength, she could fight freely, fighting until her heart's content. I respect your courage, and I respect the spirit of you both. Today, I, Artoria Pendragon, will fight you with the sword in the stone in my hand. This battle is a battle of generals, soldiers may not intervene. Once these words were spoken, the high-level undead that had originally been eyeing Sebastian and Cocytus covetously left the main battlefield to the three, entangled with Nazarick's pay-to-win mercenaries on the side. A flash of surprise crossed Sebastian's eyes. He could feel the sincerity in Artoria's words, as well as the sense of honor belonging to a noble knight. Taking on 2 level 100 NPCs alone, this was not Artoria's arrogance, but confidence in her own strength, and at the same time, respect for them. Sebastian also understood the opponent's strength, although their positions were hostile, he appreciated this respect. Cocytus let out a low roar, which was excitement and a response of respect to his opponent. Good. Since that is the case, I, Cocytus, will also give it my all. Before the words had faded, the Insect King moved. All 4 arms struck out, the 4 weapons like 4 streams of light, attacking from different angles with different attributes, instantly sealing off the space around Artoria. Icy cold, armor-piercing, heavy, and swift, 4 completely different attack characteristics intertwined, forming a web of death. Artoria's eyes narrowed, and her footwork changed. Moving nimbly and swiftly, the sword in the stone seemed to come alive in her hands. Every parry struck the force nodes of Cocytus's weapons, diverting that violent power to the side. The sound of metal clashing was incessant, sparks flew everywhere, and every collision caused the air to tremble. Sebastian did not rush to join the fray. As an experienced warrior, he was waiting for the best opportunity. The dragonoid butler's eyes captured Artoria's movements, analyzing her fighting style and flaws. He noticed that Artoria's swordsmanship was extremely exquisite, her defense was watertight, and she carried a kingly aura. Her strength and speed far exceeded those of ordinary level 100 NPCs. Seeing that he couldn't break through after a long attack, Cocytus roared, his icy aura surging. The ground rapidly froze with him at the center, and countless ice spikes rose from the ground, attempting to restrict Artoria's movement. At the same time, the god-slaying blade in his hand erupted with a dazzling blue light, delivering a devastating horizontal slash, carrying a bone-chilling cold, sweeping towards Artoria. Artoria did not dodge, she held the sword in the stone vertically in front of her, and a golden aura surged from her body. She gave a light shout, using 0.001% of her own strength, and struck precisely on the spine of the god-slaying blade. With a crisp sound, a tiny crack actually appeared on the body of the indestructible god-slaying blade. Cocytus felt a massive, overwhelming force come through, his arm went numb, and he couldn't help but step back half a step. What strong power! Cocytus was shocked. Just at this moment, Sebastian, who had been maneuvering, moved. He appeared at Artoria's side and back, his right fist clenched tight, covered in a faint golden halo. This punch condensed all his strength. With the force of a thunderbolt, it went straight for Artoria's face. The instant Sebastian's fist wind approached, Artoria's body spun violently, the sword in the stone like a serpent emerging from its hole, the spine of the blade striking precisely against Sebastian's fist. With a dull thud, Sebastian felt a soft yet incredibly tough force come through. His fist felt as if it had hit cotton, and the force was instantly dissipated by more than half. He used the momentum to retreat, reforming a pincer attack with Cocytus. The two of you are indeed powerful. Continue. Artoria was fighting 1 against 2 with ease. These 2 guardians, one as tough as an iceberg with violent attacks, the other as fluid as water and opportunistic, actually complemented each other quite well when working together. This is fun, so much fun. I don't know if there will be any more fights in the future, so I must have a good time with these 2 today. Your strength also exceeded our expectations, Lady Artoria. It seems it is indeed difficult to defeat you without joining forces. The 3 looked at each other, remaining silent. The battle erupted once again. This time, the coordination between Sebastian and Cocytus was even more tacit, 1 hard and 1 soft, 1 tense and 1 relaxed. They firmly restrained Artoria within a certain range. Artoria held the sword in the stone, relying on her own exquisite martial arts to fight with ease under the pincer attack of the 2. Her golden figure wove through the icy blue cold and black fist shadows, and every collision erupted with astonishing energy. She never used the sword of promised victory, strictly adhering to her promise, and parried with her opponents using pure swordsmanship. On the other side of the battlefield, the sky seemed to have been torn open by a huge gap. Ainz, played by Pandora's actor, held both hands high, and a complex and arcane magic circle slowly rotated around him, emitting a heart-stopping light. I am Ainz Ooal. Pandora's actor imitated Ainz's tone, his voice spreading across the entire battlefield. Witness it. This is the power of Nazarick, the super-tier magic fallen down a maximize area. As his words fell, the magic circle above his head suddenly erupted with blinding white light, and then a pillar of light shooting into the sky, centered on Ainz, quickly spread outwards. The pure white pillar of light, carrying an earth-shattering momentum, washed over the dense undead army below. The deafening explosions continued one after another, the earth trembled, and countless low-level undead instantly turned into fly ash. Those fragile skeletons, zombies, and wraiths had no room to resist at all in the face of such terrifying power. In just an instant, a huge desert area appeared on the battlefield. A rough estimate suggests that at least 15,000 plus low-level undead were wiped out under this enhanced super-tier magic. The vanguard of the undead army was almost cut off forcibly. Seeing this, the servants of Nazarick let out earth-shaking cheers, and their morale was greatly boosted. This joy did not last long. When casting the spell, Pandora's actor sought only the maximum range of damage, but ignored a crucial problem: reality does not have friendly fire immunity. The real Momonga, when releasing such large-scale destructive magic, would always remind his teammates to evacuate or teleport them away. After all, Pandora's actor was an imitator. Although he was impeccable in his abilities, there was a slight deviation from the original in certain subtle combat experiences and habitual operations. Those Nazarick pay-to-win mercenaries who were following behind the undead army, near the undead killed by Ainz, and attempting to flank from the side, were also within the coverage range of fallen down a maximize area. They did not possess the powerful resistance and health points like Nazarick's NPCs, and in the face of the aftermath of the super-tier magic, they also appeared extremely fragile. Desperate screams came from the mercenaries below. Hundreds of well-equipped, level 30-ish pay-to-win mercenaries were blown away by the high-energy white-hot shockwave and turned into ashes in the high temperature. Pandora's actor floated in mid-air, looking at the casualties of his allies below. A trace of stiffness flashed across his skeleton face. He had imitated the majesty and power of Lord Ainz when releasing magic, but he had also created a tragic case of friendly fire. For the victory of Nazarick, some sacrifices are necessary. Yes, that's right, that is it. After saying this, Pandora's actor no longer paid attention to the tragic situation below, casting his gaze towards the direction where Artoria, Sebastian, and Cocytus were fiercely fighting, evaluating his next move. Chapter 104, An Unbeatable Opponent. On the battlefield, the surviving Nazarick minions, after a brief cheer, watched as their familiar mercenary comrades were instantly turned into charred remains. The joy on their faces froze, replaced by a complex emotion. Although they were mercenaries summoned via microtransactions, like many of the Guardians, these mercenaries also possessed their own emotions. Witnessing their companions being slaughtered by their boss naturally left them feeling terrible. The scales of victory did not tilt because of one super-tier spell. The battle in the forest continued. Sebastian and Cocytus also noticed the drastic change in the rear. The dragonoid butler frowned deeply and paused the fight. He naturally knew that it wasn't the real Ainz casting the super-tier spell, and he also saw the casualties among friendly forces. In his heart, he found it difficult to identify with Pandora's actions. Cocytus was only briefly distracted before refocusing all his attention on his opponent. To him, accidents on the battlefield were inevitable, and Pandora's indiscriminate attack was a last resort. These matters had little to do with him. The battle before him was his only focus at this moment. Artoria also felt the destructive power and the subsequent destruction of both armies. Her eyes turned cold, and she suddenly didn't want to continue fighting Cocytus and Sebastian. Originally, because she hadn't sensed malice from them and their combat prowess was far higher than the locals, she had wanted to spar with them. Now, it seemed the Great Tomb was just like this. There aren't that many good people in the world, it's all relative. The two guardians before her might have some sense of justice, but that couldn't change their chaotic alignment. Is this the power of your Nazarick? A tyranny that doesn't even spare its own people. I will never let an existence like you continue to harm the world. Artoria's voice was as cold as frost. Pandora's backstabbing of his subordinates reminded her of the destruction of Britain in her past life, which was also related to betrayal. Her eyes burned with raging fire as she looked at the undead in the sky. Harming the world. Sebastian frowned deeply. He understood Artoria's anger. Pandora's friendly fire indeed violated Nazaric's code of conduct, and went against Ainz's philosophy. But as a guardian of Nazaric, he could never sit by and watch someone criticize the place he had sworn to protect with his life. Lady Artoria, there may be a misunderstanding, but the majesty of Nazaric cannot be blasphemed. Cocytus said nothing, but the fighting spirit and gravity in his compound eyes intensified. He could feel the drastic change in Artoria's aura. It was no longer the restrained sharpness from before, but like a volcano about to erupt. The real battle was only just beginning. Misunderstanding? I don't think so. Artoria's voice was cold. Golden flames surged around her, no longer restrained, but becoming blazing and outward-facing. To not even care about the sacrifice of your own comrades, your indifference to life, and the very existence of Nazaric itself, is a threat to order and life. As she finished speaking, Artoria retracted her grip on her sword. By my honor, I swear. By my sword, I bear witness. Saber manifested her anti-fortress noble phantasm Excalibur. Her voice, like a tolling bell, echoed across the battlefield. I, Artoria Pendragon, hereby declare to Nazaric, your existence ends today. It seems you are serious, my lady. Sebastian's voice was low, his meticulously groomed silver hair fluttering slightly under the pressure. He pressed his palms together, and white energy spread around his body. It was a sign that Sebastian was pushing his power to the limit. As a dragonoid butler, Sebastian not only possessed unparalleled combat techniques, but also unfathomable strength and physical endurance. For Nazaric. Nearby, Cocytus launched the attack first. Several icy slashes struck toward Artoria simultaneously, freezing the moisture in the air and making crackling sounds. Sebastian followed closely behind. He instantly closed the distance, his fist wind whistling as it tore through the air, aimed directly at Artoria's throat. The white battle aura swirling around his fist was enough to crush steel into slag. Facing the all-out pincer attack from the two guardians, Artoria's expression remained unchanged, her holy sword slightly raised. She didn't even display any complex footwork, just responding calmly with reaction speeds beyond ordinary people and absolute combat intuition. The holy sword traced golden arcs in the air. Though they looked slow, they always managed to parry Cocytus's slashes, and Sebastian's fists always struck empty air. The sound of metal clashing was incessant, sparks flying. Every collision erupted with astonishing shockwaves, shaking the surrounding trees and sending leaves fluttering. What was chilling was that no matter how ferocious Sebastian's fists were or how swift Cocytus's slashes were, they couldn't shake Artoria in the slightest. She stood there like a reef on the shore, unmoved by the crashing waves. The barrier formed by her blazing golden flames completely isolated the aftermath of the two guardians' attacks. How is this possible? Is this her full strength? A storm surged in Sebastian's heart. He could clearly feel the power coming from that holy sword was as vast as the sea. His full force blow probably looked like a child's play to his opponent. A trace of disbelief flashed in Cocytus's compound eyes. His prideful speed and strength seemed so pale and powerless before the opponent's absolute strength. At this rate, there is no chance of winning. Sebastian's frown deepened. He glanced at the Ainz still hovering in the air, emitting an ominous aura, and then looked at the girl knight before him. Cocytus, it seems we must use our trump card. Sebastian said in a low voice. Cocytus did not respond. He leaped backward suddenly, standing shoulder to shoulder with Sebastian. For the glory of Nazaric. Cocytus roared, taking out a strangely shaped broken longsword from his personal space. It looked a bit like the demon blade Thousand Blades, but was even more powerful than it. World-class item, blade of billions at the same time. Sebastian took a horn from his bosom. It was made from the tip of a giant beast horn, carved with intricate runes, and exuded a desolate aura. World-class item, Horn of Gellerhorn. Sebastian brought the horn to his lips. Woo woo woo. The distant sound of the horn rang out, piercing the clamor of the battlefield. The sky instantly turned gloomy, dark clouds gathered, and thunder rumbled. 3 huge pillars of light descended from the sky, landing behind Sebastian and Cocytus. As the light dissipated, 3 tall, imposing figures appeared. One held a giant hammer and wore a winged helmet, eyes flashing with thunder, the avatar of Thor, the god of thunder. One was draped in a grey cloak, holding the Gungnir, eyes sharp as an eagle, the avatar of Odin, and another was a god avatar just there to make up the numbers. The 3 avatars of the Norse gods each possessed combat power exceeding level 100, with the most powerful Odin avatar even reaching the level of weak city destroyer, exuding awe-inspiring divine might. Summoning gods. Artoria raised an eyebrow slightly, but there was no fear in her eyes. Instead, a trace of icy mockery flashed. Nazaric's methods are truly endless. It's a pity that borrowed power is, after all, borrowed. Moreover, the aura of these few gods was not even comparable to the top-tier heroic spirits in Valhalla, at most able to trade blows with herself when she had just arrived in this world. Attack together. Cocytus didn't waste words, raising the blade of billions high and charging toward Artoria first. The blade cut through the air, leaving a pitch-black trail. The avatar of Thor roared and threw the giant hammer, carrying the power of heaven-destroying thunder. The avatar of Odin raised the Gungnir, the tip of the spear locking onto Artoria. The other god avatar, though not attacking, released life energy, buffing Cocytus and Sebastian. Sebastian roamed on the side, looking for an opportunity to attack. For a time, Nazaric's 5 top combatants launched destructive attacks on Artoria from different directions. The world changed color, the wind and clouds churning. The entire forest trembled under the collision of this terrifying power. A large number of undead and summoned mercenaries who were close were directly caught in the attack, without a shred of resistance, turning into fly ash within a few breaths. Only high-level undead of LV60+ and high-level mercenaries were qualified to observe this battle of the strong, buying a 0-price ticket before death. Facing this city-destroying level siege, Artoria's expression remained calm. She took a deep breath, and the golden flames on her body surged again. I said, your existence ends today. She raised Excalibur, the tip of the sword pointing to the sky. To ensure she didn't destroy the space of the 6th floor, she controlled the released power to 1/10,000th. Excalibur. The light of the holy sword reached an unprecedented level, as if all the light in the world was gathered on this sword. The light was so dazzling that Sebastian, Cocytus, and the 3 god avatars subconsciously squinted, a fear rising from the depths of their souls. There was no earth-shattering loud noise, only a golden torrent condensed to the extreme, gushing out from the tip of the holy sword. This torrent was precise, sacred, and unstoppable, like God's sword of judgment, instantly sweeping away everything in front. Cocytus tried his best to wield the blade of billions to resist, but that world-class item was like paper before the golden torrent, shattering inch by inch instantly. Cocytus didn't even have time to scream. Along with his huge body, he turned into the purest light particles in the torrent and dissipated into the air. The 3 Norse god avatars were no exception. Thor's giant hammer was easily shattered by the torrent, the thunder power instantly annihilated. Odin's Gungnir snapped inch by inch, his sharp eyes filled with shock. If the 2 famous god avatars were like this, the one just there to make up the numbers didn't need to be mentioned. The 3 avatars were thoroughly purified by the golden torrent together. Sebastian witnessed all this, a hint of despair flashing in his eyes. Is this my final destination? I am sorry I cannot serve you any more. The dragonoid butler didn't choose to run. He stood straight, straightened his slightly messy butler uniform, and a complex expression appeared on his face, perhaps regret, perhaps his final loyalty to Nazarick. Sebastian closed his eyes, welcoming the unavoidable end. The golden torrent swept past, and the dragonoid butler's figure, like his comrades, turned into starlight dancing in the sky. Just one strike. Using 2 world-class items, summoning 3 god avatars, Nazarick's 2 top guardians, 5 people tried their best, yet they couldn't even withstand one sword stroke from Artoria, or even just 1/10,000th of its power. In the sky, Pandora's actor, who had been watching coldly, the moment he saw the golden torrent erupt and Cocytus and Sebastian being instantly annihilated on the face maintaining Ainz' form, for the first time, revealed true horror and fear. His brain had only one thought left at this moment. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. This level of power is simply not something that should exist in this world. Even a world-class item couldn't withstand it, this guy. Pandora's previous probing seemed so ridiculous and naive in the face of absolute power. Only then did he realize that Nazarick might truly have reached a life-or-death moment. The deaths of Cocytus and Sebastian were like an alarm bell, waking him up fiercely. If they followed the previous actions, all the Guardians would die meaninglessly. Retreat immediately. Pandora could no longer care about maintaining his disguise, his voice trembling slightly because of fear, and he issued the order at the fastest speed. All Nazarick units, floor guardians, leave the battlefield immediately and return to the Great Tomb, fast. He didn't even dare to stay for a second, using a high-tier teleportation and disappearing into midair. If he were a second late, he, with such an obvious target, would probably follow in the footsteps of Cocytus and Sebastian, turning into a wisp in that starlight. On the battlefield, the golden torrent gradually dissipated. In the devastated forest, Artoria stood quietly in place holding her holy sword, the golden flames slowly converging. She looked at the direction Pandora was fleeing, her eyes cold, not pursuing. Chapter 105, Pandora's actor's retreat order was received by all the Guardians, but those deep in the encirclement were unable to execute it immediately. On the other side of the battlefield, Albedo was locked in a bitter struggle, tightly entangled by Shaltir as the two dragged each other down. The attack of Janungagap against items was indeed top tier, but its effectiveness against living beings was not significant. As the Guardian with the highest overall strength, Shaltir understood the characteristics of the world-class item, and gathered her flying familiars around her, forming a ring of biological armor. Whenever the big-mouthed ape tried to retreat, she would use her spute lance to fiercely elbow her opponent, leaving Albedo unable to break free for the time being. Demiurge. Pandora's actor contacted the mastermind in the rear via magical communication. Cover me, I'm going to get Albedo and the others to retreat. Understood, Pandora's actor Sama. Demiurge's calm voice replied. Pandora's actor's figure flickered, transforming into a streak of light. Sorry, this path is blocked. Just as Ainz was about to approach the two women locked in combat, his path was blocked by a Sky City Guardian clad in dragon-scale armor, and wielding a longsword, a sharp sword aura brushing past him. You nuisance. A flicker of ruthlessness flashed in Pandora's actor's eyes. He had copied 80% of Ainz' combat power, and if nothing else, his PvP ability was considered above average among players, even more so compared to the Guardians. Several high-tier spells condensed instantly, and within just a few breaths, they were blasted towards the Sky City Guardian. Demiurge also acted simultaneously, unleashing interference magic to tie down the surrounding enemies. 5 minutes later, Leonardo, who had been watching the show, felt it was enough and revoked his control over the Sky City Guardian. With their consciousness returned to normal and still not realizing what was happening, the Sky City Guardian was caught off guard and forced to parry under the combined attacks of Pandora's actor and Demiurge. Between experts, the outcome of a clash is often decided in an instant. When the Sky Guardian exposed a flaw, Pandora's actor seized the opportunity, first using Time Stop to control the opponent, then casting several buff spells on himself, and closing the distance. He unleashed 2 shots of Reality Slash, a high-damage area of effect skill that imitated the world champion exclusive skill Dimension Slash. Although the power was only 1/3 of the original, after being amplified by buffs, 2 shots of Reality Slash were enough to finish off a Sky City Guardian, who had already exhausted most of their resources. Enemies in a time-stop state cannot attack, but as long as the distance is close enough, 2 point-blank shots of Reality Slash are not something everyone can react to. The Sky City Guardian took both weakened Dimension Slashes head-on. They immediately entered a near-death state and fell from midair. Albedo, let's go. Having finally dealt with one opponent, Pandora's actor shouted in a hurry, but just at that moment, an immensely powerful aura suddenly erupted. Leonardo naturally wouldn't let the pure white succubus delivered to his doorstep go for nothing. He teleported in front of Albedo, and seeing this, Shaltir stopped her movements. Want to leave? I think you should stay. Leonardo didn't even glance at Pandora's actor, throwing a punch directly that struck Albedo's weapon with great force. Albedo screamed, flying backward like a kite with a broken string, crashing heavily onto the ground. Janungagap slipped from her hand, and Pandora's actor's expression changed drastically. He wanted to rescue her, but it was already too late. Leonardo took the Cheongsam out of his ring, and against Albedo, who had lost her world-class item, he activated the forced control ability of Downfall of Castle and Country. A golden dragon emerged from the Cheongsam, flew a circle, and then plunged straight into Albedo's body. The pure white succubus's eyes instantly became vacant, her body stiffened, and her movements stopped. After struggling for only a few seconds, she was controlled by this power. Albedo-sama. Pandora's actor could only watch helplessly as Albedo was controlled, and Leonardo's cold gaze had already locked onto him. At this moment, the plan for a full retreat had fallen into a dilemma. Ainz-sama, the situation is very bad right now. Pandora's actor thought to himself. He felt unprecedented pressure at this moment, and Albedo's gradually chilling gaze pierced deep into his heart like a thorn. He saw Leonardo wave his hand, and an invisible force dragged Albedo behind him, as if dragging a soulless doll. I am truly terribly sorry. I was so rude to Master just now. It's all that hateful Lamprey's fault for not reminding me. After being controlled, Albedo twisted her alluring body. She wanted to press herself against Leonardo, but fearing it would be too impolite, she clasped her hands together and tried to get as close to her master as possible. It's fine, I'm quite magnanimous. Leonardo turned his head to examine the pure white succubus. He had to admit that Tabula Smaragdina's modeling technique was quite strong. In terms of appearance, Albedo already surpassed 99% of women. And her many hidden settings also piqued Leonardo's interest. He wondered, compared to the vampire Shaltir, which one was more moist. Humph, you big-mouthed ape, how come you're calling him master too? Putting away her sput lance, Shaltir in her Valkyrie form also came to Leonardo's side, sandwiching him between the two of them. Watching the intimate appearance of the three, Pandora's actor clenched his fists. He had just gone through a battle, and both his mana and stamina were depleted. Facing Leonardo, there was only a dead end. Death was not scary. As a being created by the great supreme being, Ainz-sama, sacrificing himself for his father Sama was his honor, and one of Pandora's actor's final destinations. But now he could not die. He had to bring the situation here back and tell Ainz-sama. This was his only mission at this moment. Pandora's actor turned sharply, no longer looking at the controlled Albedo and Shaltir, as that sight would only shake his resolve. Demiurge, retreat! Pandora's actor shouted urgently via magical communication. Understood, Pandora's actor Sama. Demiurge, who had also been watching from afar, knew that they could not afford any more casualties, so he hurriedly ordered his subordinate 3 demons to go and cover Pandora's actor's retreat. Leonardo did not pursue immediately. In any case, in the end, none of these guardians would be able to escape. Seeing that the enemy's gaze was not fixed on him, Pandora's actor did not hesitate at all, and ran away immediately. Widen magic, a greater teleportation. Because of the architectural effects of the Great Tomb, outsiders could not teleport freely within Nazarick, so Pandora's actor set the teleportation destination to the 8th floor, which was the final line of defense. The teleportation magic circle shone brightly, and Pandora's actor's figure disappeared. Master, why didn't you keep that guy? Yeah, these stubborn floor guardians, since they are working against Master, we should just kill them all. Albedo and Shaltir, one on the left and one on the right, intimately held Leonardo's 2 arms, looking at the fleeing Pandora's actor with not a shred of friendship in their eyes. Hee, no rush, let the bullets fly for a while longer. Meanwhile, in another corner of the battlefield, in an area where forest beasts and undead were intertwined, a tragic escape was unfolding. Aura and Mare Bello-Fiori stood back to back, their breathing somewhat disordered. Their proud legion of magical beasts had suffered heavy losses at this moment, and on the ground, two massive, level 90 forest dragons, one gold and one green, were fighting each other. These were Aura's most effective mounts and combat forces, each one having cost unimaginable resources to cultivate, but now, because of Daji's control, they were slaughtering each other. Not only that, but the surrounding ground was also scattered with the corpses of many rare magical beasts. Daji, in her awakened mode, combined with the various skills she had learned independently in recent years, as well as the level suppression of exceeding level 100 NPCs, resulted in the two forest guardians being completely no match for the maid cafe. Sister, we can't hold on much longer. Mare Bello-Fiori's voice carried a crying tone. His staff's light was dim, his iconic twin tails were somewhat disheveled, and his face was covered in mud and the blood of magical beasts. Before Aura could react, Daji, who was attacking from the shadows, twitched her face slightly. This little cross-dressing boy looked sickly and weak, with a submissive appearance, but his attacks were ruthless. A single small calamity wiped out tens of thousands of minions in the vicinity, including quite a few high-level undead. If she were to take a hit directly, even if she didn't die or suffer serious injury immediately, it definitely wouldn't feel good. The two siblings were dressed strangely, the sister wore men's clothing, the brother wore women's clothing, and their personalities were completely opposite. Don't be afraid, Mare Bello-Fiori, don't forget that you are a guardian of Nazarick. Show your courage, we still have one last move. Upon hearing this, Mare Bello-Fiori looked at his sister. He knew what she was referring to, it was the trump card they kept at the bottom of the box, the world-class item depiction of nature and society, greed and absence of desire. They wouldn't use it unless it was the absolute last resort. Sister. No buts. Aura interrupted him sternly. If this continues, we will both die here. Do you want to disappoint Ainz-sama? Mentioning Ainz-sama, Mare Bello-Fiori's eyes instantly became firm, and he nodded, yeah. Sister, I understand. The two siblings looked at each other and hesitated no more. Aura took the scroll from her waist and threw it high into the sky. Depiction of nature and society unfolded instantly. An ancient and huge scroll appeared out of thin air above the battlefield. As the scroll slowly unfurled, it depicted magnificent mountains, rivers, the sun, the moon, and stars, as if it were a real world. A powerful suction force emanated from the scroll, absorbing enemies within a 500 m radius. Daji, having been careless for a moment, entered directly into the world within depiction of nature and society. Because it was currently in operation, the depiction of nature and society could not be taken away, so the two forest guardians had to seize the opportunity to leave. Chapter 106. The news of the total collapse of the 6th floor quickly reached Ainz's ears, and the dire situation of Cocytus and Sebastian being killed in action, along with Albedo being controlled, only added to his distress. After spending 500 million, Gargantua was successfully resurrected. If nothing went wrong, the deceased Cocytus and Sebastian could also be resurrected at full status by spending gold coins, but the lost world-class item could not be retrieved. Likewise, the controlled Albedo could not be recovered. Unless the opponent was killed, and an attempt was made to resurrect her again, would that refresh her status. But the current situation was that, let alone killing the two controlled floor guardians, Nazarick was almost being cut through by the invaders. It would be good enough if the remaining floors could be held. After fighting for so long, the opponent had only lost 2 level 100 NPCs, while his side had 3 level 100 NPCs killed and 2 controlled, resulting in a net loss of 3. The process of resurrecting Cocytus and Sebastian was proceeding in an orderly fashion in the throne hall of the Great Tomb of Nazarick. 1 billion gold coins were piled on both sides of the throne, forming several small golden hills. Following the command for resurrection, the gold coins surged like flowing water, gradually forming 2 bodies beneath the throne. As the light gradually dissipated, Cocytus and Sebastian reappeared before everyone, stark naked. Although resurrection caused the Guardians to lose some memories, leaving the two Guardians with no recollection of what had happened previously, seeing the grave expressions of their companions around them, Cocytus and his companion immediately realized the severity of the situation. Ainz Sama. Cocytus knelt on one knee, his armor clanking. Sebastian took the clothes handed over by a maid, put them on, and then bowed slightly, his refined face resolute. Rise, Cocytus, Sebastian. Ainz's gaze swept over the Guardians who had reassembled before the throne except for the controlled Albedo and Shaltir, as well as Gargantua. All the floor Guardians of Nazarick were present. Pandora's actor, who had returned to his original form, Demiurge, still dressed as a tactical advisor, and Ora Bellafiora, and Mare Bellafiori, who had just experienced a fierce battle and whose breathing had not yet fully steadied. Nazarick has nowhere left to retreat. The invaders' strength is beyond imagination, especially that a Hogue, and that guy who has hidden his strength until now, capable of causing both Albedo and Shaltir to fail. Ainz Sama, how should we respond next? Ainz's bony hand tapped slowly on the armrest of the throne, producing a dull sound, as if striking the heartstrings of everyone present. In his hollow eye sockets, crimson pupils flickered. Nazarick had faced invaders more than once or twice, but the strength of this group of invaders even vaguely exceeded that of the time when 1,500 people invaded. The floor Guardians falling one after another, being controlled, the loss of a world-class item, all of this was like heavy hammers striking at his title as the supreme being. Now that his comrades were not here, Nazarick could only rely on himself and the various Guardians. One could say Ainz was under immense pressure. Since there is no retreat. Ainz's voice echoed in the empty throne hall, then, we shall welcome their final assault on the 8th floor, either we bury the enemy, or we go down in flames. Victim, I will have to trouble you for what comes next. This is my duty, Ainz Sama. The 8th floor was one of the strongest defenses of the Great Tomb of Nazarick, and it was also the final barrier in Ainz's plan. Not only did it have more complex and deadly traps, but more importantly, the Great Tomb's T0 combat power, Rubido, was also restricted to activity on this floor. As a level 100 NPC created from the world-class item caloric stone, Rubido's personal combat power was even above Touch Me's. Even Ainz himself, without sufficient status buffs, could not defeat this strongest combatant. Of course, that would be a different story if a world-class item were used. Victim. Beside the pink embryo, Ora Bellafiora and Mare Bellafiori exchanged glances, both seeing a trace of reluctance in the other's eyes. Although they were set at 60 and 70 years old, for the dark elf race, they were equivalent to children. But Victim was truly the youngest. It was also the weakest among the many floor Guardians, but this seemingly harmless, even somewhat cute pink infant was one of Nazarick's most terrifying weapons. Knowing that the Guardians could be resurrected, although Demiurge did not want to watch his companion sacrifice their life to win, it was not unacceptable. Ainz Sama is wise. By utilizing the saint's punishment triggered after Victim's death to inflict area of effect forced control on the invaders, that will be the best opportunity for us to launch a full-scale counterattack and turn the tide of the battle in one fell swoop. Correct, the skill range after Victim's sacrifice covers the entire 8th floor. These invaders have been unstoppable all the way, so they will inevitably be arrogant and underestimate the enemy. As long as they step into the 8th floor, as long as they cannot help but kill Victim. Speaking up to this point, Ainz paused, a glimmer of anticipation flashing within his soul fire, mixed with a trace of worry. Then, what awaits them will be a thunderous strike from all the forces Nazarick can muster. This is what it means that an arrogant army will surely be defeated. By the way, Cocytus, Sebastian, you have just been resurrected, how is your status? Please rest assured, Ainz Sama. We have recovered to our peak status, and can enter battle at any time. Cocytus said in a muffled voice, veins, if he had any, bulging on his clenched fists, filled with resentment over the previous failure. The memory refresh after resurrection did not make him realize the huge gap between the enemy and himself. Sebastian nodded slightly, dignified without anger. We will surely clear the obstacles for Ainz Sama, defend the glory of the supreme beings, and protect the honor of Nazarick. Very good. Ainz looked around at everyone, feeling a bit of relief in his heart. Demiurge, you are responsible for the final layout of the 8th floor. You must adjust all traps and defense mechanisms to their most efficient state to ensure that our counterattack can be unleashed instantly. As you command, Ainz Sama. Orabella Fiora, Mare Bello Fiori, you two siblings are responsible for coordinating with Demiurge. Utilize your control over nature magic to further confuse the enemy and guide them toward our preset battlefield. Yes, Ainz Sama. Orabella Fiora and Mare Bello Fiori replied in unison. Having experienced the previous crushing defeat, their eyes were now filled with the flames of vengeance. Pandora's actor you. Ainz looked at Pandora's actor, who had returned to his original form, somewhat unsure of how to arrange for this prince. The enemy had already captured Albedo, and information about Pandora's actor had likely leaked as well. The invaders would naturally doubt whether the Ainz appearing on the battlefield was the real one. The plan to lure the enemy into a decapitation strike and split them up would be very difficult to be effective. Before the battle begins, cooperate with Rubido. Her strength is the strongest in Nazarick, and her role is far more useful than a copied version of me. Of course, you can also look for an opportunity to copy the opponent. Pandora's actor's mimicry required certain conditions, and the strength of the invaders this time was quite powerful. He could only see if he could find an opportunity to copy one while fighting the enemy when mimicking Rubido. As for Gargantua, Ainz pondered for a moment. The siege golem was too clumsy. For this team fight, it could only serve as a front line, or a full output carry, throwing stones from the back. As the final barrier, and to cover you, Gargantua will guard the path to the core of Nazarick. Absolutely no enemy must be allowed to bypass the 8th floor. Understood. The plan was quickly formulated. Every guardian knew that this was Nazarick's last stand, and it could not afford to fail. Ainz slowly stood up and waved his bony hand, then, move out. Let the invaders know that the great tomb of Nazarick is not a place they can touch. For Ainz Sama. For Nazarick. Passionate slogans rang out in the throne hall, and subsequently, the guardians rushed to their respective posts. The 8th floor, this long silent death checkpoint, was about to face its most severe test. If they won, Nazarick would survive a disaster. If they lost, the guild would vanish, the great tomb would be destroyed in an instant, and Ainz and the various floor guardians would lead lives of fugitives, wandering and destitute. The 8th floor of the great tomb was a dead, silent wilderness with yellow sand filling the sky, only a few withered trees, desolate and dangerous. The guardian of this floor was Victim, whose residence was originally at the Tree of Life of Kabbalah, near the Cherry Blossom Sanctuary, which was also the domain of the youngest sister of the Pleiades, Ooal, and also a pay-to-win trap area. The 7th floor was originally the domain protected by Demiurge, but because the invaders were powerful, staying there alone was just waiting for death, and coupled with the lack of many traps, holding it stubbornly was of little significance. Therefore, Leonardo and his party rushed all the way from the 6th floor to the 8th floor without any obstruction, and the final decisive battle with Nazarick was about to arrive. The Guardians did not have to wait long before the invaders' vanguard troops stepped into the 8th floor. Leading them was none other than Leonardo, the one Ainz feared the most, along with the controlled Albedo and Shaltir. Seeing the undisguisable, loving gazes that Albedo and Shaltir directed toward the invader, the soul fire of Ainz, who was hidden in the shadows, shrank violently. What a cuckolding, what a cuckolding! Don't forget to like and subscribe to Novels Wonderland.